in 3 minutes. So sit back, relax, and we'll catch you in a bit. Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting in 2 minutes. So relax and sit back. We'll catch you in a bit. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. I'm Gerson De Jesus. I'm the customer service from Techsoup. And today, few house rules. So this session will be recorded, and yes, copies of the recording deck will be sent to you. And this session will be simulcast on our Facebook page, so feel free to share. And you'll be on mute for encouragement. So you'll be sending questions via Q&A tab. So we have our Q&A group chat, and we'll answer them at the end on the latter part of this session. And no such thing as stupid questions. So feel free to ask to drop on questions, and we will attend to that and address to you shortly. And yeah, today, just a quick overview about Techsoup. So we're international nonprofit organizations. We provide technical support and tech tools to nonprofits. So we do so much more about discounts, offer discounts on the tools, but we also provide capacity buildings, programs, and one of this is the webinar event. So it's one way that we are doing that provides significant impact and develop next generation programs and services. And we wanted to do this and how we can support more to nonprofits organizations. And for this event, we will learn from our speaker about a nonprofit work from home guide, tools and tips from our remote team. And everyone could, raise their questions under the chat group and we will address them during the Q&A part. And yeah, I'm so excited. Before we start, let me introduce to you our speaker for today. He is the person oversees the marketing and operations in 16 countries in developing regions within South and Southeast Asia. With years of his experience in nonprofit sector, he plays an active role in developing regions within South in delivering a wide variety of services and capacity building programs from tailored for nonprofits. So with his range of experience, he can share to us his best practices to manage your team and while working remotely from tools and tips when working from home. I'm so excited. He is our program manager of Techsoup Asia Pacific. Please welcome Jed Dominic Adao.
Thanks, Jason. And hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining. We are absolutely stoked to have this conversation with you. I know working from home has been a challenge for a lot of nonprofits in a lot of different areas, and that's why we wanted to host this session, just to provide you with tips, tools, and tricks that we ourselves as a remote team, even way before the pandemic, we would like to share that to you to also help improve your daily work-life experience. Just a heads up, much like almost everyone, I am working from home. We do have a toddler outside the room, so if at any point you hear from Elmo, that's just him providing feedback. But nonetheless, just moving forward, today we will be talking about one key concept that I think you've encountered this a lot throughout the pandemic. Maybe in blogs, articles, and that's called digitization. From our understanding, because of the challenges of the pandemic, next is sustainability, which is the topmost issue for a lot of nonprofits. The ability to digitize their operations or the ability to have that flexibility as, kind of as a result of digitization, that is one of the key crucial challenges a lot of nonprofits are experiencing. And in order to ensure your longevity, we need to ensure these two things, sustainability and digitization. And more often than not, these two things go hand in hand. One could usually lead to the other. And this is what we want to talk about today. What does this term actually mean? How do we break it down into simple bits? And how do we make it accessible for nonprofits that don't necessarily have a lot of tech support or doesn't have a lot of tech staff that is savvy enough to understand modern technology or to be able to adapt and create digital plans? We are very conscious of these limitations and we want to address this topic in the simplest and most effective way possible. All right. And again, much like what Jerson mentioned earlier, there are no stupid questions. Please use the chat box. Please use the Q&A section to raise as many questions as you want, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. So just moving forward, let's try to now understand what digitization means. We want to first address this concept within the context of the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, when we were all brought back to our homes for lockdowns, the question was, how are we going to work? How are we going to communicate? How are we going to continue operating? And a key element that allowed a lot of nonprofits to be successful in that transition was being able to digitize their operations. But what does that actually mean? Now, taking again the concept of digitization and using it within the context of the pandemic, we could basically describe that as digitization as as a concept broken down into three key elements. First and foremost, it requires a resilient tech stack. What does that exactly mean, Jed? A resilient tech stack basically means a roster of solutions or apps that allow you to work remotely. And I know what you're thinking, this will equate to cloud solutions. Pretty much so, yes, because that is a crucial ingredient, that is the key ingredient that allows us to work remotely and effectively. A resilient tech stack is basically a list of tools that you're using that can allow you to work from anywhere with whatever device, or in simpler words, cloud solutions. And we'll be going through a number of these later on today. Now, but solutions is just one thing. Uh, Out of our conversations with nonprofits, usually they actually have an idea of what tools they need, or they already have, say, an ad hoc set or ad hoc roster of tools that allow them to work productively, right? But they're still experiencing issues. They're still experiencing backlogs. They're still experiencing some challenges in maintaining productivity. And that's because it relates to the second concept, which is an adaptive workflow. A lot of us have been used to working in the office, right? Just having that 8 hour block straight up, we work. And that created challenges, particularly in terms of transitioning to something more remote, because we no longer have that face-to-face interaction. If we need something from someone, from a colleague, we can't just run up to their desk anymore, knock on their table and say, hey, what's going on? That's not, uh, that's not a benefit now. We don't have that luxury anymore. That being said, there was a lot of transitions, particularly in terms of a workflow perspective, right? And we want to, and later on today, we want to adjust to that. And we'll be giving you tips on how to create an adaptive workflow that can maintain your productivity throughout this entire lockdown, throughout this, even with the quarantines. Last but not the least, at the deepest level, uh, we also want to understand one key thing, which is a culture that is receptive to change. Uh, for a lot of us nonprofits, one of the key issues that prevented us from achieving concepts one and two, a resilient tech stack and adaptive workflow, way back before the pandemic started, was because we thought our current setups were fine. It was fine as it is. The old adage was, if it's not broken, why fix it, right? And we've followed that, and I understand the reasoning for that, because we're usually strapped for resources, strapped for support. That's why we simply just manage to maintain the existing setups. But now we're forced into a situation where we do have to adapt, we do have to adjust. And that being said, we now also have to establish an internal culture that is receptive to these changes. And we'll also tackle this later down the line. What does it mean to create such an adaptive culture, right? That being said, to simplify all of those, essentially you can say that an effective, an effective and digitized process or work experience is essentially having flexibility in three key things: your resources, your workflows, and your culture. Key concept being flexibility. Flexibility is what we need most now, because we don't know if we'll ever go back to the office, or if we do go back to the office, we don't know how that's going to look like. So we need to create a system, we need to create a situation or a work experience that is receptive to these changes. Now, I don't want to limit that end result just within the context of the pandemic, because if you think about it hard, the current situation we're at, it's not just a possible outcome because of this pandemic. No, it can be a similar outcome. Say we had a natural disaster, say, or even as simple as it's raining outside and none of us can go to the office. Oh, wait, raining hard. Okay, it's raining hard outside and none of us can go to the office. It's a similar scenario. We should have that level of flexibility to allow us to work anywhere at any time. All right. That being said, let's now dig deeper into this. So the why, again, is pretty easy. The why do we have to digitize is pretty easy to grasp. It's the how that is actually difficult. How do we actually start? That's where a lot of us nonprofits find a challenge in, right? Because A, we don't know how to begin. B, we don't know how to address it. And C, we don't know how to actually maintain this process moving forward. And that's what we want to kind of like discuss throughout the session. We want to break it down into three key steps again, three key easily digestible steps. So to begin your entire process of digitization, you just really need to ask three key questions. First, what are my pain points? What are the issues we're experiencing? Because naturally we want to address them first. Secondly, as you finally understand what your issues are, we want to then match that to available options. What are the key solutions out there? And this doesn't have to just be tools. It can be tips in workflows. It can be changes in culture. It can be key discussion points internally. Those are the kinds of things you want to talk about, you want to address. The issues aren't just about tools, and we'll go through that later on as well. Issues shouldn't just be limited within the context of tools. And last but not the least, as you address those, as you find available options, you also have to be clear with yourself. What does success actually mean? If we say choose this new workflow or this new solution, how do I define that it is actually successful? That being said, you have to set certain parameters that will address that so that at the end of the process, you'll have a clear idea whether this is working or not. Because naturally, you don't want to maintain something that is actually causing more trouble, right? So, just to recap, to begin this entire process, just ask three key questions. What are my problems? What are my options? And should we choose an option, what will success look like for us? It's very simple, right? Now let's dig deeper into each of these questions. So part one, what are my problems? And to be able to do that, all you need to do is an honest assessment. It would be good if you have certain data that could back this up, but I understand that that can be a technical process and not a lot of you may have the time or resources to do that. A simple way of doing this, gather around your staff, gather around your team, and have an honest conversation with them. Where is the backlog happening? Where is the hiccups happening? As they provide feedback, you'll then start to understand where the operational pain points are. But to help create a proper backdrop for this conversation, let's go back to the key question, key issues that a lot of nonprofits experience during the start of the pandemic. And with our conversations with NGOs, it can be summarized into these five key things. One of which, and easily, the biggest concern was sustainability. How do we sustain this? Because a lot of nonprofits suddenly lost funding, suddenly lost revenue sources. So that being said, funding was a key issue. How do we sustain our operations? How do we ensure our longevity at a financial level? So that was a key one. The other most common issue as well was how do we coordinate with our team? How do we maintain lines of communication within our team or with our beneficiaries, right? So just having that ability to manage that conversations or that lines of communication, that was a key issue as well. Second, paperless. One of the key issues that persists today was that a lot of us were stuck with paper-based systems. It can be as simple as, say, HR matters. For us to be able to pay our staff, we need to go back to the office and fill out certain paperwork. This has been a key barrier for a lot of nonprofits, particularly in terms of adapting to the challenges of the pandemic, because if we're not able to go to the office, then these are key barriers to us achieving these tasks or ticking these tasks off our lists, right? So adopting a paperless system is something that is a key or is a crucial ingredient in digitizing as well. Now, in line with that, storage has also been an issue. I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but just to kind of flesh this out a bit more, the backbone, the backbone of our digital operations or remote operations is really shared storage, because that allows us to do so much more remotely, right? More often than not, the issue is that we're either relying on personal storage devices or insufficient facilities, storage facilities. That being said, later down, as we talk about our available resources or available alternatives, we'll try to flesh out some other storage facilities that will provide you with substantial, if not excessive, room of storage to just give you that room to work more effectively. And last but not the least, the biggest issue as well is that where do we get help? We may be aware of these issues, but and we may be aware of the solutions, but how do we actually start acting on it? Where do we get that support? Because it's a lot harder to set something up if we're doing it remotely now, because if something breaks, we no longer have the luxury of tapping our IT guy, right? So also run through some support articles and support resources as well that can help you manage this entire process effectively, right? So as you now understand the key issues, what I'd like to share now is that these issues actually have certain depths. It's not just the issue per se, but they can actually take a variety of forms. And these are the three key depths or levels that it can take. So the first one is it can be as simple as a resource problem. A resource problem is defined as just having insufficient features or insufficient resource. It's more of a tool-based thing, whether it lacks features, lacks storage capacity, and so on and so forth. A good example of this is that you may have a good workflow in communications internally. It just so happens that you're using, say, a free license in Zoom, which is limited to 4 to 5 minutes per call, right? In that case, where you have a good workflow, Everybody understands how to use it. It's just that your tool is insufficient. That is a resource issue. And that's usually the easiest one because all we need to do is help you find a proper and sustainable tool that can help you move forward. But it's not just a resource problem. You have to be aware that sometimes it's also a workflow issue. A workflow issue is that you may have a plethora of effective tools already in place, whether ad hoc or professional. It's just that the staff is having a hard time utilizing them and or adapting to the new remote setup. That being said, it's more of a utilization issue now than a resource problem. And we have to distinguish one and the other because if it is a workflow issue, you don't want to just be introducing new solutions because you're not actually addressing the actual problem, right? Rather, you have to create policies or training opportunities to upskill your staff to better utilize the existing resources. But we have to create that distinction because as we move further, we have to be able to address these appropriately for them. And last but not the least, there is also such a thing as a cultural problem. And I understand if a lot of you may have experienced this at one point or the other. And again, this is a common thing for a lot of us nonprofits, mainly because this is an effect of us usually being strapped for financial resources or just technical capacity. That is totally understandable. But now we're at a point that we are forced to actually adjust. We need to be conscious about this. So a cultural problem is that is essentially defined as this. You're looking more to maintain the status quo rather than being able to be receptive to change. Before that was okay for us because we could get away with it, right? Oh, we'll be fine nonetheless. But now where we're forced to adjust to a drastically different work experience, we now have to be receptive to this change because otherwise we're not going to be productive at all, okay? So cultural problem is essentially a mindset issue now. It's a mindset maybe shared by one person or the entire team. So this is something we have to be conscious about moving forward as well. That being said, how do you address these issues? Now that there's a certain problem, how do we address them and why do we need to address them that is appropriate to each step? Key issue is that if you don't address a particular issue that is appropriate to its step, it may A, persist, or B, it may mutate. Much like the virus itself, operational issues can mutate as well. Let me give you a good example. Communications. At the start of the pandemic, communications with your team, beneficiaries, benefactors, and so on was a crucial issue. That's why the need for tools like Zoom, Teams, Google Hangouts, that's why they skyrocketed, right? Now, initially, it may have been a resource problem because it was just a matter or a lack thereof. But moving forward, it can mutate. How can a communication issue mutate, Jen? Well, think about this. Before, our issue was lack of communications. Now it's actually over communication, thus leading to burnout. And that may be because it's no longer a resource issue, but more of a workflow issue. How is it a workflow issue? Having clear lines of this is my work day in terms of the oddness of this work from home situation, right? Uh, Having a clear workflow that defines what is a work day for you, given your current circumstances, that can help you manage better communications, help you, say, address time out hours, things like that. And that can thus resolve that mutated communication problem coming from a lack of communication to over communication. A workflow or a policy addressing workflows can easily address that. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, lastly, a cultural problem is a deeper kind of like variation of this. It's no longer just a lack thereof or over communication, but it's more maybe aligned with management style. Are we micromanaging because there's a lot of trust issues in terms of working from home? Are we actually not managing teams at all? And that being said, we're not being productive. These were some of the key questions we've received as well from nonprofits because there was a lot of adjustment, not just at a resource level, but even at a management level. And that drips down to the internal culture of the nonprofit itself. Just having that understanding of what productivity means at this remote setup. Are we going to maintain that 8-hour identity of productivity? Or do we move to a goal-oriented basis? It's really tricky. But this is one of the key variations or key examples of what a cultural problem can be. So these are larger management style issues that you have to address eventually. So now you have to address each properly, depending on the depth of the issue within your organizations. Because again, if you don't address it appropriately at step, it may mutate, much like the issue with the communication lines, like I've shared earlier. Now, hopefully that part makes sense. Essentially, to recap step one, what my issues are, you want to sit down with your team and just talk about stuff really. What are the problems you're experiencing? Is it a resource issue? Is it a workflow issue? And so on. As you list down these issues, it would be best to address the depth of these particular problems, because as we move forward to the availability of options, we have to be aware of how deep these problems go so we can then tailor specific or appropriate responses to these. All right. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's move forward. Again, please share questions over chat. We'll address them one by one later on. Okay. Second, let's go to the fun part. We've addressed some of the issues. Let's now think about available solutions that can help us. Let's start first within the context of resources, because that's the easiest one to discuss, to be honest. Let's use again the 5 key issues that most nonprofits experience. And what does this mean for a nonprofit moving forward? And how do we address these solutions at a solution level, right? First and foremost, sustainability. How does that affect your search for new solutions? It's really a matter of sustainability as well. How much will it cost? Will we be able to sustain the use of this? Will we be able to sustain the cost of it? And beyond that, will we be able to cover the costs of setup, training, and even the disruption that may cost operations? So these are the key questions you have to ask. Communications, what are the features available? Are they appropriately meeting the kinds of demand or typical meetings require? A good example, if you're using free Zoom licenses, is 45 minutes enough? It can be as simple as that. Or if you're using other solutions such as say Viber, WhatsApp, have they been effective in terms of just managing professional communication? Or is it creating too much of a blur between personal and professional lives, right? Paperless, how do we start? Does it offer online collaboration to basically help us start digitizing some of the operations? Which systems do we need to focus first that should transition to a paperless system? Should we focus first on HR, finance, and how do we get that started? Do we start scanning things one by one, things like that? So these are key things or questions you have to start asking as well. Storage is easier. Does it offer me substantial storage facility? And lastly, help. As we find a proper resource or proper app that can help us, what are the learning resources they're offering as well to complement that use? Do they have a library of instructional guides that we can utilize? Do they offer free setup services and so on and so forth? So these are some of the questions, and these are essentially the ways you're going to convert these issues into resourcing questions moving forward. Now, as you find available solutions, there are 2 perspectives on how you're going to move forward. A, you're either going to overhaul your entire operational system. What does that mean? This is common for organizations that may be relying on personal email accounts and or a mix of personal accounts, such as personal emails, personal messaging systems. And if say you want to move to a more professional system, then maybe you may want to visit an overhaul, because there are wealth of available solutions out there that can provide you with that full suite of cloud apps. But that being said, you have to commit to a specific system, right? Or a combination of which. So that being said, the first option is maybe you want to look at an overhaul. Maybe you want to overhaul your current system that's relying on personal systems and maybe use something as Microsoft 365, Google Suite, or maybe a mixture. Now, moving from that overhaul to that mixed type, there is also one other option. You don't always have to overhaul the entire system, right? Maybe you just want to inject 1 or 2 apps to complement your existing workflow or your existing set of resources. That being said, you can also choose to integrate. Integration is common for nonprofits that either already has a good working system, a good professional working system, regardless if it's under a single suite or not, or B, if you already are using like a full suite and you just want to introduce new facets or features to it. A good example is this. Maybe I'm already using Google and I just want to introduce some level of data analytics. So here's Tableau. because it integrates well with the resources that I'm already using. Things like that, right? So as you try to find solutions that are available for you, please bear in mind that you have to answer one of these two questions eventually. Do I need to look into a complete overhaul? Or do I just need to inject individual apps to an already existing and effective workflow, right? So moving forward, we want to now understand what our options are. Let's start first with the overhaul options. These are the options that provide you with a full list, full plethora of apps, but it may entail some level of setup and migration, right? Because it means you have to commit to the entire ecosystem of it. The best option that we have for Microsoft is really the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. And this is perfect for small sized organizations with staff sizes of 10 and below. Why is it perfect or a good option? Essentially because of two things. A, it already includes relevant desktop apps, such as your Windows OS upgrade and your Office desktop suite. So basically, the essentials of productivity are already there. However, on top of that, you also have the full list of cloud suite options, such as your communications via Teams, your collaboration via Office Online, storage via OneDrive and SharePoint, and lastly, TechSoup also offers a plethora of courses and setup services that can help you migrate to the system. And best part of it, it is entirely free for your first 10 users. So please talk to us if you want to explore this option. Second, if you don't like Microsoft, that's fine. There's always Google as an alternative. And Google also offers something for free. It is your Google Workplace. Much like Microsoft, it's essentially the Google counterpart. The only thing we have to exclude though is the on-premise apps such as Windows and Office, because naturally that's not within Google. All right. So in terms of communications, they do offer Google Meet to do your online meetings and so on. They allow you to coordinate through your emails and calendars via Gmail. They offer Google that suite of cloud apps through Google Workspace. They offer personal storage and shared drives as well. And while we don't have existing resources or sorry, support services and courses at the moment, these are pending soon in TechSoup. These will be launched soon. So hang on with us there, and we'll be able to launch those soon. But outside of that, what makes Google for nonprofits very special is the additional features of Google AdWords. If you're looking into experimenting more with your marketing, they actually offer eligible nonprofits with about $10,000 worth of credits monthly, just to help you create those text ads to reach more nonprofits, to reach more beneficiaries, reach more donors, and so on. Other credits include Google Earth if you're utilizing their Map API, and also some YouTube Premium features that can help you create actionable items from your videos if you're doing a lot of video marketing. So in terms of overhaul, these are your two key options because they provide a lot of nonprofit subscriptions, but do not be limited with the subscription types we feature. Actually, Microsoft and Google provide a wide range of discounted and free subscription plans for nonprofits, and each of which will provide a different mix of features that might be more fit for you. So please talk to us, share with us the issues that you're experiencing, and we'll help you try to find that perfect subscription plan for you. Right now, that is the overhaul approach. If you're looking to inject individual apps, here are some of our favorite applications, and here are some of the most common applications a lot of nonprofits usually utilize. And let's focus again some of the key operational areas that you're likely to have issues in: communications, collaboration, and storage. For communications, definitely Zoom is, I think, one of the most popular tools now. If you're looking to access discounts in Zoom, we can help you get 50% discounts for nonprofits, and that will cover both business and professional accounts. Slack is also a very underrated chat system that we would highly recommend to nonprofits. The Slack essentially centralizes all their chat systems, and it integrates with third-party tools such as Zoom, Google, and many more. What it allows you is that it creates this kind of like remote workspace that you can turn off if you want to just enjoy peace and quiet. And that's actually one of my tech tips for working remotely. The setup off hours. That will help them. That will help a lot in terms of just keeping yourself sane. Slack lets you do that, and it is free for 250 users or below. So I do highly recommend you explore that solution as well. Asana is so in terms of collaboration, let's look into two things. Let's first tackle DocuSign because this is the simplest one. DocuSign is, as the title suggests, it is to sign documents. It's essentially your entry-level tool to create paperless systems. Maybe it's for signing contracts, signing leave approvals, and so on and so forth. So DocuSign also offers mass sendouts if, say, you need to reach a number of people. And it also allows a level of tracking and security features as well, because more often than not, these things that can sign are very sensitive. Now, outside of that, one key area of collaboration you may want to explore moving forward is also the area of project management. I mentioned earlier that one key version of a cultural issue is just that perspective on management, team management. And project management tools like Asana can help you kind of like complement these change shifts or these transitions to a more goal-oriented approach or whatever variety or version you're looking at. So Asana does provide the tools for that. It helps you create project portfolios, track progress, assign tasks, and so on and so forth. Uh, if you're looking for better project management tools, this might be a good tool to look into. Or if you're looking for something a little more simple, you can also start with something as free as Trello. Just to make you more aware of how you're going to manage this process entirely. Last but not the least, storage. We do also offer if you want to look for something that can complement your current storage facilities in Google or Microsoft, there's also Dropbox. They do offer 40% discounts to nonprofits, either for standard plans, which offers about 5 TB of maximum storage, or advanced, which in their price list, they say has as much space as needed. So let's take DocuSign to their word, Dropbox on their word to that. Okay. So again, if you're not looking to overhaul and you're just looking to introduce individual apps, these are some of the good apps to start with. But do not be limited with these, actually. We're not advocating for a specific setup. No, we're just giving you these just to help you get started with your search process. If you're looking for something else, just let us know, and we'll help you throughout that conversation. We'll help you out. We'll help you out throughout that searching process, right? Now, as you introduce new tools, though, there are other factors to consider outside of just that cost, outside of just that price tag. What are these other factors that I need to look into, Jed? First, there are other costs to consider. What are those? Is it a subscription type? Is it a one-time licensing deal? That's one key variation of this. Or how much does migration cost? How much does setup cost? How much does training cost? Because these all have their own costs, right? So as you budget for these, it would be good to be sensitive to these other price items, to these what we call hidden costs, because as much as possible, we want to be as transparent as possible in this. Secondly, when you're introducing new tools or if you're overhauling your systems, you have to look into how it will actually affect either existing resources if you're injecting new tools, individual apps, or how will it affect the current way you work with your team? Because naturally, when we introduce new tools, there's a level of disruption, particularly in terms of learning and relearning how to use that tool and how to use that tool within the context of a specific operation. That being said, expect disruption, but you also have to be aware that disruption isn't usually limited to that particular aspect of your operation. It can also drip down to other operations or other teams, particularly if you're looking at say a feature or a function that crosses multiple teams, such as storage. If you're introducing a new storage solution, you have to be aware of how this will affect different teams. Maybe some other teams prefer this particular solution because additional encryption and so on and so forth. So just that. Just don't be limited with a view of disruption as being exactly for that particular purpose, because it can drip down into different features or teams or functions, right? Next, how will my transition plan look like? This is also something you have to plan for. If you're transitioning to a new tool or a new system, you have to be sensitive with how you're going to treat the existing resources that you already have. As you're moving out, say, from tool A to tool B, you have to think about how you're going to move out course, and what you're going to do with tool A. Is it a complete cutoff? As we move to tool B, we let tool A go, we close that account entirely, or do we keep it running for a particular period of time just to allow for a more gradual transition? So you have to think about that as well, because naturally that will cause some level of disruption. And lastly, you also want to ask, is my team actually using it? And this is usually the question we keep forgetting. Eventually, as you migrate to a new tool, you want to look back a month or two afterwards and say, hey guys, are you actually using it? Because if not, what has this been about? What was this entire process for? And this is more common than you think, you know. And if you're experiencing this, don't worry. It's an everyday thing for us nonprofits. Because we usually do fall back to what we're comfortable with. But naturally, you want to ask that so you can also open up questions such as, maybe I'm not using this because I need more training, or maybe because it's actually not working appropriately within this particular context. So it's good to ask that, because usually it can actually branch out to different issues that you may want to address as well. All right. So we've talked a lot about resourcing problems, right? But how about workflows? Because you mentioned earlier, problems isn't just limited to tools. It can be about workflows as well. Yes, and let's try to address that here. Using the 5 different common issues again, let's try to convert that into questions that are pertaining to workflows. Sustainability is a key issue. Let's start with that. And sustainability, the lack of sustainability lately, as most papers and research suggest, it was caused mainly because a lot of us were relying on, say, a single or key funders that have since stopped providing funding as the pandemic started. How did that happen? Why does that happen? A lot of different reasons. For some nonprofits that have been relying on single sources of corporate funding, maybe that corporate funder looked into supporting their staff, or maybe they're losing revenue as well. And naturally, that does affect you because it can lead to limited or no funding at all. That being said, the common recommendation now is to look into diversifying your revenue streams. If you want to learn more about how to diversify your revenue streams, you have a number of webinars with Blackbaud. Blackbaud works specifically within the donor and funding management or donor management services for nonprofits. You want to, we will be sharing links to those webinars so you can start addressing this particular issue and start exploring ways on how you can diversify your revenue streams. Second, communication has also been a key issue, but as I mentioned earlier, before it started as a lack of communication, but it suddenly mutated into over communication where it's burning us out. That being said, you have to ask, is my communication system good? And is constant communication actually helpful? Maybe do we want to set up policies for off hours? Or maybe we want to set up kind of like mental health breaks. Because let's be honest, that is a very important question we have to start asking our teams about, right? Second, as we go paperless, it's also worth considering, as we started to go paperless, can we commit to 100% remote operations? And is it actually sustainable, or is it more financially feasible? So these are things you may want to start asking at a workflow level. Maybe you want to start moving certain functions or teams entirely paperless because it's doable, right? And that might lead to more financial freedom in the future. Second, cloud storage. Is our team actually committing to the workflows, particularly for cloud storage? And this can be as simple as, is my director still sending me contracts over email and sending drafts or comments over email as well? Because we have storage to help us do that now. So these are just the simple workflow variations that can take. Last but not the least, where do we get help? We're here, and we are an NGO as well, so we totally understand the issues, challenges you're facing. And we're not advocating for a specific donor, a specific tool. We're advocating for you becoming more flexible, having that mental flexibility and cultural flexibility to start being more receptive to change. That being said, please talk to us. We're happy to walk you throughout this process. So recapping this tool selection process, or is this really the stage of searching for alternatives? User assessments. Use that step 1. Use the questions we raised in step 1 to then address what particular issues you want to address, and in terms of also choosing the right tool that is appropriate to them. That's about it. And as you create filter on top of filter, you'll eventually arrive in say one or two good choices. And then you want to start looking into testing that with a team. That, now that being said, let's move on to the last part, which is really defining success. And this is actually a very quick section. As we move into introducing new tools, I just want you all to be very sensitive about how we define success. And this plays a big role in terms of creating buy-in. As we start considering new resources, naturally, each of us may approach that new tool with different sets of value propositions. We see different values in that, right? The reason why I'm bringing this up is that as much as possible, we want to be aligned with why this new tool is more valuable than the old one, or why this new workflow is more valuable than the old one. Easiest way to do that is to usually translate it into something that whose value is shared, such as maybe it's more sustainable, it provides more features, it creates quicker turnover, so it helps you work faster, provides you more flexibility, particularly if you're moving from an on-premise to a cloud system. And one other thing you may want to look into as well is that because this new tool is more secure, and we need that now we're at a time we're all remote, right? That being said, as you start looking into these value propositions and as you look into quantifying success into different parameters, these may be the key things you may want to look at, just so that it's easily understood by different teams that are different colleagues that may not necessarily be as tech savvy. Because in simplifying it into these value propositions, the conversation becomes a lot easier, right? There will still be disruption, but it will be easily understood because this is what we're getting out of it, okay? That being said, as much as possible, try to maintain that mutual value proposition. Try to find what that means for the entire team, because a mutually recognized value proposition equals better buy-in and equals a better process of transition moving forward, right? Okay, and I know we're going through this fast, but please, we are leaving a lot of room later for questions. So I'm going through this really quick so we have a lot more time for questions. Last but not the least, be sensitive with how resources and workflows interact with one another. The end goal here is not to shift into a specific tool or a specific resource. No, it's actually to create a more diverse, also a more receptive culture. And remember that resource and workflows, those are just drivers. They're not the end all be all. The end all be all is having a culture, internal culture that is receptive to change. And you can start working towards that by just being receptive to different tools and different workflows. That's what I'm trying to say. And as they interact with one another, and as you become more receptive, you're now developing an internal culture that is the end all be all, which is a culture that is more receptive to change. Now, ending this entire process, step 3, the goal is not a new tool or a new workflow. The goal is to be more receptive to change, because that is what we need during these times of uncertainty. That being said, best way to experiment or best way to drive that, maybe introduce a new tool that is relevant from your assessments and that is relevant with the features that you need. Okay. My final tip, as you move forward this entire process, there are a lot of moments that you're going to be unsure of things, and that's okay. Don't be discouraged by that. That is part of the process. That is the part of learning. If you're unsure, that means there's just more room for growth. That being said, I do want to end my session and open up for questions because I hope you have a lot of questions, and I am keen to answer them.
Thank you so much, Jed. That was so wonderful and very learning experience from us. And we do have a couple of questions here coming from the Q&A anonymous attendee. The first one is how to get that Zoom 50% discount voucher code. Is it available for monthly subscription for project purpose or only annual subscription? Is it available for other ad or enlarged meeting in Zoom platform?
That's a good question. Yeah, so Techsoup is partnered with Zoom in terms of supporting nonprofits. If you are registered in your Techsoup country program, please send us your email or send us the organization name so we can check first if you are eligible for it, because there is an eligibility process to that. Say you are a qualified organization in Techsoup, you can purchase that voucher code, and that will then unlock that 50% off in terms of pro subscriptions or business subscriptions. It is that 50 off does trickle down to add-ons, yes, particularly large meetings and webinars. It is, however, restricted to annual billing. So you have to commit to that at an annual level. That is the policy of Zoom for nonprofits. So hopefully that
Thank
answers the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. We also have like Facebook simulcast. We were getting a lot of questions there. The first one is, what tools would you like to recommend, or what is your go-to tool or solution?
Oh, okay, awesome. My go-to tool for an effective uh, remote work experience, look for a good chat system. Why is that? Because the major friction with nonprofits that transition to a complete to this or to transition to a remote setup is that we're unsure of how to manage our staff. And as much as I hate to say it, constant communication is great, but has to be monitored, has to be managed. Sorry, not monitored, managed. The best way to do that is have a professional chat system. Why? A professional chat system does not overlap with your personal life. You can turn it off. Uh, Here's a good example of that. Say you're using WhatsApp and your staff is using WhatsApp personal. I have a bad habit of just sending a message, say, I thought of something or I forgot to say, send this to Jerson earlier. I'll type it now, say it's 7 p.m. I'll type it now so we can look at it the next day. But if you're doing that and it's a personal chat system, you're actually starting to invade his personal time, which is not really good. That being said, look into a personal chat system, for a professional chat system, and try to move out of the personal systems. This creates some level of separation between work and personal life, even at a virtual level, right? Because that helps a lot in terms of mental health. And secondly, usually professional chat systems integrate well with third-party apps. The one we're using now is Slack. You can test it out, but if you have other ideas, that will be great as well. Slack integrates with, say, Zoom. If I'm chatting with Jerson and I said, hey, maybe this is easier said than written, I'll just click a button and it will open automatically a Zoom call. And also, it actually even integrates well with Google Drive. Say I'm working on a document with Jerson over Google Docs. He makes a comment. I'll see that in my Slack channel with him. That will pop up and say, hey, Jed, here's a comment for this particular document. You want to look at it? So that being said, I don't have to go to my email anymore. Everything is in my chat. So,
Yeah,
professional chat system. Please look at it.
yeah. Thanks, Jed. Yeah, we have another question under Q&A chat group from anonymous attendee. Does Google nonprofit includes use of Google Classroom?
Ooh, that is a good question. I don't think so. I don't think so because I have to look into that specifically, but from my understanding, no, because that is more for the educational plan. There is a separate education plan, and we're unfortunately not involved in that. But I will leave a note here to look into that because that is very interesting because I know nonprofits may have educational programs that may require that. So let me look at that, or at least look into, say, webinar features for Hangouts that might serve as an alternative. So I'll definitely look into that. That's a really good question.
Yeah, I think this is also a question coming from Facebook, which is the utilization of the tools. So her question is, they're concerned about the utilization of the tools. Is there like available training courses online for remote tool setup?
Yes, yes, actually, TechSoup has a program called TechSoup Courses. This is an entire course site tailored for nonprofits. As you will send you the link, and you look, and again, these courses aren't just specific to tools. It's actually specific to thematic or operational concerns, such as fundraising for nonprofits, social media marketing for nonprofits. It would be good to explore this particularly if you have specific colleagues that are working in these areas. And you can definitely look into these courses to upskill your team. Yeah, so yes, we do. We have a lot of TechSoup courses available. Please look into it. We'll send the link.
Thanks, Jed. So we're getting more questions coming from Facebook. Another one is, what are your reasons why an NGO should choose Google for nonprofit over Microsoft 365 and vice
Ooh,
versa?
wow, spicy question. That's a good one. I'm not advocating one over the other. I'm advocating for what works best. And I think you're saying, I think you're thinking that's the safe answer. Kind Definitely yes, because I don't know what your current situation is. Google has certain advantages over Microsoft, and Microsoft has certain advantages over Google. Within the context of the nonprofit program, just that, not in general. Okay, I just want to have that particular caveat. The Google for Nonprofit program has advantages, particularly in terms of AdWords. Microsoft doesn't have that, and you can explore Google AdWords to complement your marketing initiatives. On Microsoft's end, they offer the additional advantage of those on-premise offers, such as Windows upgrades and Office on desktop. But the thing is, you don't have to choose one over the other. If you're an eligible nonprofit, you can actually get both. So it's just really a matter of creating workflows and how to balance this. We from TechSoup actually utilize both. We use our emails. Our emails are hosted over Microsoft 365, but we use Google to collaborate online via Google Docs, Google Sheets, and so on. So you don't really have to champion one over the other. You can actually get both, but some of the features for the nonprofit program may have certain distinctions that might create more value proposition for you, such as AdWords for Google and that on-premise app for Microsoft.
Thanks, Jed. We have another two questions coming from Q&A group. So the first one is, they have already the Google Suite regular subscription. Can they shift to Google for nonprofits?
Yes, yes, definitely yes. This should save you a bit of money because I think that can be expensive, isn't it? You can, okay, so I do need to be specific here because that can mean one of two things. A, if you're using personal Google accounts, like a mix of personal Google accounts, like those at Gmail personal accounts, that may, well, both cases, yes, you can. If you're using personal, that may entail some level of migration. Please talk to us. We can help walk you through that process and we can potentially help you with that actual process. But if you're using paid subscription plans, yes, there is an article in Google that can walk you through on how you're going to convert that. But please be mindful that because Google offers a range of subscription plans for nonprofits, just be mindful of what you're migrating to, because you might lose some paid features you already have now. That being said, you may want to look into the other nonprofit subscription plans that are at a discounted rate. You don't have to commit to one for the entire team. You can actually create a mix of everything, really. That being said, just be mindful of the features and whether you're going to be able to carry over everything. Because the free Google for Nonprofits fund is basic. So if you have additional paid features now, just be sensitive of what those are and if those are going to be carried over. So that is my only tip. But quick answer is yes. That was a pretty long answer to specifically short question. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. We have, I think there's a last questions. Are there any discounted Microsoft Office apps available? So, and how do they're gonna avail that one?
Yes, definitely, definitely. There are on-premise licenses such as Windows and Office that are available at a very low admin fee from TechSoup. These are licenses donated by Microsoft that we can help you access. That is one. But if you're looking to really make the most of it, particularly in terms of creating an opportunity to start exploring cloud, we recommend using something as Microsoft 365 Business Premium. It's entirely free. It comes with a plethora of cloud suite and cloud apps, and it includes those desktop productivity licenses. So there's no cost to it. Just let us know. We'll help you get started.
Yeah, I think is any questions, guys? So feel free to drop questions under chat and group, or you can feel free to put here in the comments, and also to our FB pages.
Interesting, we're getting questions from the simulcast. Guys, this is the first time we're doing a simulcast through Facebook, so thank you so much for tuning in there as well. Very exciting, really.
Okay, I think we don't have any questions, but yeah, I do have a questions from my end, Jed. So
Sure.
is there like a bookkeeping or accounting tool available online or in TechSoup, or what is your alternative tool instead of getting this bookkeeping or accounting tool?
Oh, that is a tricky one. We don't have a bookkeeping solution in the TechSoup catalog for South or Southeast Asia. I want to have that caveat explicitly written out. We are we do have partners such as NetSuite. We can recommend that. We can definitely help connect you to NetSuite, who has their own independent nonprofit program, and they're primarily for bookkeeping. And they're not really, yeah, bookkeeping, ERP, things like that. So you can definitely look into that. While we don't have anything within the catalog itself, we can perhaps relay you to partners such as them.
Okay, thanks, Jed. We have another question from Q&A.
Please send them through.
Yeah, they're an NGO with a small team, like a lean staff of 6. Any suggestion? So,
Ooh, in what particular area? Sorry. I hear you though. The Manila team for TechSoup is about 5 people too. So we also are a lean team. But any suggestions? I'll take that in general, or did they add the context?
oh, he had the follow-up questions. If
Sure.
it's anxious, if it's efficient to invest in these tools with the lean, with if they have like a 6 staff only when it comes to subscriptions. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. I'll be honest, investing into remote cloud solutions shouldn't be driven by the size of your team. If anything, it's actually easier to invest now where you have a smaller team because it's just easier to manage, really, as opposed to say a staff of 50 to 100 people, right? Invest now because what you're trying to do here is you're investing in flexibility. Take, for example, you're looking into Microsoft 365 or Google for nonprofits. It would be good to start investing time into researching and trying to set that up because it's far manageable now. Maybe as you grow, you're going to add 5, 10 staff, and that becomes a lot more complicated if we're going to look into this in the future. Remember, the process is you're not shifting just for the purposes of now. You're shifting to invest in a future, more flexible and more resilient work system. So I think just having that mindset shift of we're investing for the future, not we're investing just to be responsive. So please talk to us. We're happy to walk you through that.
Thank you so much for that, Jed. Any questions, guys? Or if you do have, or you have additional questions, feel free to drop at our email at customer service at Techsoup Asia.
That reminds me, I do have a slide for that. Please, let's get this conversation, keep this conversation going. Jason, myself, the entire TechSoup team, we would love to continue this conversation. Don't let this be the end of our interaction. We're here for you, and we are a nonprofit as well. So we understand the challenges, the issues that you're going through, and we would be more than happy to help you kind of like work on that.
Thank you. I think we're pretty, yeah, checking some questions. Yeah, I think we pretty raised that one. Yeah, all good. Again, thank you very much, Jed, for this wonderful to be one of our speakers and to facilitating this one. So we're really so much thank you for having this one, and of course to Jara, our marketing. So we hope to see you guys for our next webinar. So, and yeah, again, feel free to drop your additional questions to our customer service email. That's customerservice@techsoup.asia. So we'll be happy to address your concerns on the tickets.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, and let's keep in touch. Keep in touch.
Thank you.